Today, my friends, I wanted to start a new series on design. I wanted to talk about my design process, and basically how I approach figure drawing, drawing portraits, and I'm going to show you a way how I would do this with designing instead of copying. So typically, when we're drawing for ourselves, when we want to make nice finished drawings, realistic drawings, when we're practicing and doing studies, typically the temptation is the process begins with a lot of observation, interpretation, and copying. Basically, I see this, I'm going to copy that. I see a face, copy that. I see this detail, I copy that. What I wanted to do in this series is show you how I use design to make decisions. So I take what we have and we make decisions with what we have instead of simply copying. And I believe this is a way to get a much more effective drawing, much higher quality drawing, and most importantly, a drawing that's more impactful. That's what we want. We want to connect with the audience and give them lots of reason to not only look at our picture, but stay in our picture and appreciate our picture. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start with a figure today, and make sure to stick around for the entire series because I'm going to go through portraits, I'm going to go through pictorial composition, and then I'm going to go through some exercises and some ways that how I would practice and improve my own composition. So thank you for being here. And before we begin, I just wanted to quickly shout out my website, www.drawwithchris.com. So if you're new to me and you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my free email newsletter. I started writing newsletters again, so you'll get lots of deep insight in my articles, and they're 100% free. You also get access to handouts, references, a whole lot of beautiful resources to help you draw better and make better, more beautiful pictures, my friends. So go to www.drawwithchris.com. And before we begin, I can just make notes on my sticky pad. People really like my sticky pad videos, so let me just make a note on my sticky pad here. So the number one thing before I do a drawing is, and I've said this many times in my classes and videos, is what do I want to say? This is 1A. What do I want to say? What do I want to say? What do I want to say? What story do I want to tell? And 1B is what do I have? What do I have? What is the model doing? What was my reference doing? What do I want to say? What do I want to do? Now, I always come to the practice table with an intention in mind, with a story in mind, and that's a good practice, but we'll save that for another day. This is my thought process to get this far. I have a story in mind. I have a narrative in mind. And so when I was looking through reference, or when I shoot models, or when I compose pictures, I have an idea in mind, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. So when I saw this, I was like, this reference would be great to tell the story I already have in mind. So very helpful to have that in mind. That's number 1A. 1B is, what do I have? Meaning, what's the model doing? What's my reference doing? Because sometimes, maybe you don't quite have a story or narrative in mind, but maybe you just on Pinterest, you're on Instagram and you see a great reference, you're on New Masters Academy and you're like, wow. Or you're at a life drawing, you're like, wow, that's a beautiful pose, it's beautiful light, whatever. What do I have? So it's also good to just kind of think, see what you have. Because the temptation is, right? The temptation is, I'm going to draw today, so let me get a model or reference and draw copy. See copy, 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 right? We don't want to do that. We don't want to copy. We don't want to copy. We don't want to copy. And that's what this whole series is about. And this is how I start the process. I have a story in mind. And it can be as simple as a metaphor. And I've talked about this many times. But have something in mind and then take a moment to look at the reference and see what you have. Now, when you practice design, that's sort of the preliminary. When you want to practice design, I recommend going on easy mode. What I mean by easy mode is choosing some reference or some pictures that are just like really interesting and cool already. That way it's not that difficult to add your own interpretation, something that's already cool. Now, looking at this, you're like, wow, that's incredible. That's clearly cool and interesting already. Here's an example of a portrait. And we're going to work on this in the next video when we get to the portraits. So this is just a cool, interesting character. Cool, interesting light. Look at this guy. This guy, he's got story built into his face. So this is an example of an easy, and the beautiful chiaroscuro lighting, the cool, mafia, gangster, mob boss outfit. it's easy for me to use this as a basis to tell a very interesting story or narrative. Versus if you had a boring composition or a boring pose, it takes more work, which is good, but when you're new, it's good to have easy mode. So I'm always recommend that you pick something easy. Pick something that's already dynamic and interesting to practice this stuff, especially if you're new to design. Hope that makes sense, my friends. So what we're going to do today, we're going to do linear design, basically only drawing. We're not going to do tonal design. So this is going to be a linear design demonstration. And I'm just going to kind of walk you through as much of my design process as possible in this video, my friends. So you saw the preliminary, have something in mind. Now we're just going to go through the process here. Let's see, what can we do? I have a story in mind already, and this is just me. This is helpful because I like to write before I draw more of a narrative piece. Essentially, my story, I have a series in mind, I've talked about this many times, is essentially about suffering and salvation. Suffering and salvation through the body. That says salvation through the body. So it's basically a story about the body and how we can uplift ourselves out of pain and suffering. And this is because, just a quick backstory, in 2023, I had the worst injury of my life, a leg injury, and I couldn't walk or sit for 4 months. So it was very traumatic, full of emotions. So now I'm channeling all those emotions into a series of artwork, which is always great advice, of course, always a great thing to do. So that's what I have in mind, basically. So that's where my story comes from. If you don't have one thing you could do is just jot down some metaphors. And I've talked about this many times. Just look at a picture and whatever pops in your head, right, basically. Okay? That's what I'm going with today. Suffering and salvation through the body. That's what I'm working with, my friends. Let's see if I can communicate that through the drawing and also just try to make this drawing better. Make it better, make it pop more, make it more interesting, make it more dynamic than the picture and more impactful. That's the word, impactful. I want what you want and what the viewer wants. We all want the same thing. We all want an awesome dynamic picture to look at, really. Every artist wants to make their best, most dynamic, most beautiful artwork. Every viewer, people who like to look at artwork and pictures, want to see gorgeous, beautiful, dynamic, interesting storytelling drawings. We all want the same thing. So that's what we're going to do today. Design is how we're going to get there, my friends. Let's go. So what do we have? Remember, part one is what do I want to say? Already have that. And I use what do I want to say to help me choose good reference or to take photo of a model and pose, right? That would be, for the more advanced of you watching, that would be the goal. And you're like, well, how do we do that, Chris? Well, you just do a bunch of these. You just thumbnail like a madman. You just sketch, and thumbnail. But anyway, we're not going to do that today. So, what do we have? Let's take a look at what we have. So I'm going to take my little drawing here. And I'm going to see what we have. Well, when I look for what I have, when I look at a reference, I go and I say, what do you mean, Chris? What do you mean by what do we have? What does the picture give us? Well, I look for line. I look for action. I look for shape. And I look for possible relationships. Okay? So what do we have? What lines do we have? Obviously, look at this bad boy. Whoosh. Maybe it's better in red. Look at this. That's a powerful line. This is a powerful shape. That pointed foot, powerful shape. I can use that. Pointy shapes have very powerful psychological meanings. Look at this gorgeous, beautiful triangular abstract shape. Wow, 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 wow. So I got that triangle. So just that alone, just the fact that this is a triangle and I can emphasize the triangle can help me tell a story. Triangle is about stability. That's one of the main psychological reads. So I got line, I got triangular negative shapes. Action, what actions do I have? Look at this beautiful sweep. This beautiful sweep. Whoop. Beautiful shape we already talked about. And what relationships do I have? Chris, what relationships do I have? Well, I have this one from side to side. I have, here's the back leg interacting with the shoulder. That is wild. So that's a wild thing I can play with. The head's kind of dipped in. These hands are relating beautifully to the feet. The relationship of these two legs relative to the hips. The relationship of the leg to the elbow, the top to the bottom, is by this line. So I know I'm going to emphasize that. And the relationship of this foot to this foot and to the ground. This foot's actually elevated. I'm loving that. This is flat on the surface, so flat, flat, elevated. So that's an interesting thing I could play with. I'm going to draw now. I'm going to ignore you guys, so forgive me. Just watch. When I come up to a design decision, I will stop and explain, okay? I've already made some design decisions here. And right now, I'm just kind of going through this blue underdrawing here, this blue lay-in. And I'm going to use black. This is Prismacolor Very Thin. So it's a semi-erasable colored pencil, nice and flexible. So I'm going to use this to reinforce my lay-in. That way I can make better decisions. So I'm basically committing. I'm slowly committing to a finished line drawing. I can make more decisions then. So I need to commit to some decisions as well. Look at this just beautiful thumb. And shout out to B.R. Sorensen. I grabbed this image from Instagram, B.R. Sorensen. Shout out to you for this beautiful pose, my God. Okay, so there's just so much interesting stuff happening in this toe. And I appreciate you guys watching. The muscularity is important here. It's subtle but important. This model is quite thick and muscular. I kind of want to make her a bit thinner, leaner, and more frail looking because that's kind of how I felt when I was injured. So if I make her too muscular, it'll feel too powerful. So that's another design decision that's happening in the moment here. I'm consciously making the model that I have today a bit thinner and more frail looking because she is quite a powerful, athletic looking woman, and which is great. But I think it'll serve my story better if she's a bit thinner and frailer. So that right away, my friends, is a design decision. That's a good stopping point here. When I drew this blue underdrawing, I was thinking that same thing. I'm like, wow, this model is super muscular and powerful. I've seen some photos of her standing up. She is muscular and powerful. And I'm like, I love the pose, but I need to make her feel a bit more frail, more injured, really, because that's kind of what this story is about. This story is about my injury and recovering from injury and the pain and suffering I went through being injured. So already making design decisions, not copying. This heel is so beautiful, and it can be interpreted in a couple ways. So, wow, I am just blown away. When I saw this reference, I was blown away. Like, wow. So I'm going to have to turn it upside down soon because I don't want to mess up that head. That little shape, the moment I drew it, I go, oh, 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 oh. Remember I said we got to look for relationships. So this little nugget has to be designed right here. So we're going to come back to that. Actually, her whole butt, her hips and her butt. So part of this is her glutes. So her glute muscles and fat and tissue. Part of this is the pelvic bone. So all of these shapes need to be designed to they relate. This needs to relate to the rest of the body. So this is fundamental figure drawing design right here. I cannot just merely copy this. I have to be very thoughtful with this design. So already I'm like, oh, I'm going to pause and we're going to come back to that. That's important, my friends. This contour is so important. Do I make it smooth and fast to give it more speed? Do I exaggerate it? Do I make it bumpy to slow it down and add more detail? That we will see. We will see as we go. So right now my gut reaction is to make it smoother because that's my natural tendency. Stretch and pinch. Comment below if you are a Steve Huston fan or maybe you are an MMA student. And you're like, Chris, I know about stretch and pinch. I know about that. Steve's the man. Yeah, I agree. He is the man. So stretch and pinch. Which is stretch and pinch really is, in my opinion, a design philosophy. Steve Huston is known as a master of structure. People think of Steve Huston as boxers in structure, but he's actually a master of design. And stretch and pinch is a design philosophy. So is box logic. So is Steve Huston's laws of color. In a way, they're kind of design philosophies. So the pinch needs to be designed. How pinchy to make it? We'll come back to that. Let me just get some stuff down so I can get going here. And I'm going to turn it upside down now. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. This is how I normally draw. Another reason why I don't make too many videos is because when I draw, I'm like constantly moving and flipping, and yeah, it's like I don't just, I constantly moving, so it's not very easy to record the way that I naturally draw. When you see my drawing videos, I'm never happy with them because I have to make them so stiff to explain. But if you ever watch me, if you ever see me draw in person, I'm always moving. I'm always moving the drawing like this. And I'm always moving my body, stepping away. Because I need to constantly see it from a distance. It's just one of the things I'm obsessed about is the read, relationships, clarity. To help me get clarity, I have to constantly look at my drawing from every different position. It's just like a sculptor. A sculptor doesn't make a sculpture in one position. He's constantly moving the sculpture around to see it in the round. And that's kind of how I approach. So this is needs to be designed. This contour line, I don't have to copy this contour line, my friends. This is a serious design question. So we're going to come back to this. Let me get that elbow. The amount of detail, the depth of this elbow, armpit, excuse me. Okay, I think that's pretty good. And how this thing floats off the ground. So I left that shadow note there. as a note to myself, because I love how this is off the ground and this is seat. This reminds me of going back of have something to say and choosing good reference. When I saw this, I'm like, wow, that's exactly my story. So my story was I was crippled, right? I had a leg injury, so I couldn't walk. So I had to move myself around. I couldn't put my leg on the ground. So I had to constantly lift myself off the ground. So this is kind of a metaphor for what I had to go through. Constantly having your feet off the ground. It's not fun, my friends. Comment below if you, whoever's watching, ever had a leg injury. You know what I'm talking about. It's not fun. Okay. Now, what are we doing here? I'm trying to think. Right now, I'm looking at this. I go, we have a nice lay-in. I want to start designing. What's my focal point? What's the thing about? Where's the focal point? Could be here. Could be the face. It won't be. Could be the hand. What do I want my drawing's main focal point? What is the focal point, my friends? Focal point 1, 2, 3. It should be like this, actually. FP 1, 2, 3. Where is my focal point? I don't have to decide now, but it would help. I love this hand. I love this hand. This hand should be a focal point. This should be a focal point. One, two, three. Okay, I got it. 1, 2, 3. Hand, hip, face, and hand. 1, 2, 3. So focal point 1, 2, 3. So I want you to kind of look in this zone. I want you to look in this zone, but this will be the main zone. So that means, let me give this hand a bit of attention. And what do I want to say about this focal point? How does it relate to my story about suffering, about salvation, about suffering, about healing, about uplifting the body? I got it. So this is going to be about a story about pain, the pain of not being able to walk, and dealing with that pain, the pain of having to use your upper body strength to constantly lift your body because you can't walk. So I'm going to put a lot of tension here, a lot of tension here, and a lot of tension at the hand, the elbow. I'm going to put a lot of detail and tension here. I won't be able to get into it in this video because we'll have to get to tone and things, but I already know because this is a focal point. I already know that I'm going to put most of my attention here and kind of not so much attention there. Now I'm going to try to relate this to the other zones, and we'll see how far we can get. So, and again, I'm only going to use lines so far. We'll see how far we can get. So notice this heel. Notice this heel. Has to do that. You see? That's design, my friends. That's design. So I'm thinking this heel has to do that. This thing has to do that. This thing has to be fairly sharp because sharp equals pain. This is a metaphor for pain. This will relate back to the face. All this beautiful twisting and contraction will equal tension. Tension, relationship, metaphor equals pain. So that's my thinking, my friends, right here in this zone. So that's FP1. So I hope you see what I'm going through this quickly because I don't want this video to be 10 hours long, but that's what I'm thinking. This line has to be designed. The line of the heel has to be designed. Right here, do I do a curve? Do I do a point? That's important. I can make this come to a point. I can make it come to a curve. I haven't figured it out yet, but I know this stuff is what I'm going to do, and then we're going to work on these hips. So anyway, let's get back to work. Let's get back to work. I told you I would try to stop whenever something comes to mind. I'm going to make a corner. A corner is sharper and more painful than a curve. So I want to emphasize pain. This zone is going to emphasize pain. Pain, 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 and uplifting yourself through pain. That's sort of the thinking so far. I'm going to exaggerate the calf bulge a bit for more contraction and more C versus straight contrast, which means I'm going to turn down. Notice I turn down the stretch. So this is the stretch of this leg. This is the contraction of this leg. The pinch of this leg. Every form has stretch and pinch, not just the torso. So that tells me I'm going to give a little bit more contraction over here. Contraction over here. A little bit sharper on this glute, this butt, this hip, the butt, the glute. A bit sharper to represent pain, and then soften the curve to represent some relief. So a bit of relief, a bit of so it's going to be pain, 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 tension, 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 pain, 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 tension, pain, 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 pain. You see? You see the beautiful contrast? Tension, 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 tension. Relax. That is design, my friends. It's so simple. It's so simple. It's so simple. Once you have a couple of clues and techniques, if you like my work so far, definitely come work with me in person. If you go to my website, you can fill out a form, and we can start a conversation. If you want me to come to your school or your academy, that's really my favorite thing to do. Okay, so this hip, I'm going to create some tension here. And bring this back over. I got to make sure that this relates over. Whoop. I got to make sure this relates over. So that means I'm going to do this. Whoop. See, it's very subtle. And then watch this. So this is design right here. This is design, my friends. Sorry. Got to come back. So this is important to cover right here. I got a hip, right? If I don't design this, it will look terrible. It'll be in isolation. I need it to relate to the rest of the body. What am I going to do? I'm going to put an emphasis here. So here, here. I'm going to put an accent here. And then I need something here. So that can be a highlight. That can be the shape of my opening of the underwear, the leotard, the thing. So I have one, two, three, potentially four things that will relate me back down. This must relate, or else it'll look so flat and ugly and stupid. So that's my thinking, my friends. So you see this opening, it looks like, to a layperson, it looks like, oh, he just copied what he saw. No, 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 no. That shape, this shape is very different from this shape. And I just showed you why it was different. In the reference, her stretch side is much more bumpy. I'm going to choose to make it calmer, remember, because I want calmness. Here, pain, 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 contrast. And let's see, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I know I'm going to probably put a heavy dark accent here to reinforce that this is contacting a surface. So that will be more of tonal design. The face will be abstracted and shadow. Notice that this leg is quite straight. I think it's a little too straight, but it kind of works. Kind of works. And then let's go over here. Let's go over here. Let's go over here. I do need to turn the drawing pretty soon. Make sure this relates. So we got to get another thing. Another thing. So again, this is linear design. That's what I call it. So we got to get this to relate to this, right? We got to get this leg to relate to this leg. So we have this line. So we make sure the line is drawn properly. This line. So we need something here. What can we put here? Well, watch this. I can put something here maybe. And then that'll do that. I'll put something here, maybe a highlight here like that. So again, I'm thinking relate. Never just blindly copy. I'm thinking, how can I best relate these two things? How can I design my details to best relate two things, whatever I want to relate? In this case, it's a leg. So in this case, I will do this most likely. Watch this. So I'm going to put a little bump here. And then watch this. A little designed little nugget. That's that detail right here. But I'm designing it to fit my needs. So you see, here, here, here. Boop, boop, boop. See? And I can put something else here. Watch this. Watch this. Just a light, subtle, that's all I need. That's all I need. So I can keep reinforcing that as we go. That's all we need. This one's not too far. This one kind of concerns me. This one's not relating that well. Kind of concerns me. But it's okay for now. It's okay for now. It's kind of, this is so strong now that this one can be forgiven a little bit. We don't have to reinforce it. I'm going to turn it upside down, see what decisions we can make, what improvements we can make. Where are we at here? What's going on? So we designed this opening. We designed this hip. This contour line is pretty close to what I needed. It's pretty close. But notice it goes up and then down. So the opening, this hip line, my friends, this line is really important. I need the pelvis bone. I need the pelvis bone for you to read this leg properly. Now it's here, it's in shadow. Her pelvis bone is right here. I just know that from basic anatomy. I can see this little bump. You see there's a bump right here. There's a bump right here. There's a bump right here, and that is the back of her pelvis bone. The front, it's here, but we can't see it because she's wearing black underwear thing. So what do I do? What do I do with my opening? I go whoop. You see, I'm going to exaggerate it. You see? I open it up a little bit. I change the design of the opening so that I want you to see the hip. I want you to see the hip bone. And what that does is now your mind will do this. Your mind will draw the hip bone. Your mind will draw the thigh. And your mind will draw the abdomen. So I'm giving you the 3 sections. Those of you who have seen who have my figure drawing book, you'll know that I am obsessed with this 3-section relationship. The leg, the hip, and the abdomen. So that's design, my friends. I'm designing the opening of her costume, her fabric, her underwear, to show a piece of anatomy that I want you to see. And it's subtle. It's so subtle, but it's just enough. And I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to do a little overlap. You see? A little overlap and then a subtle change. Boom. I've basically drawn the hip without drawing the hip, just by making a design decision. You see? And remember, really to me, design, if I can describe why I'm obsessed with design and why I think design is important, the main benefit of design is to say more or do more with less. Designing gives you the ability to say more or do more with less. In other words, if you can design properly, with one line, you can communicate 5 different things. With this one line and this one tiny overlap, I communicate hip bone. I communicate thigh overlap. I communicate relationship to the abdomen. And I also communicate fabric. She's like, oh, she's wearing something. So you see? You see, my friends? Say more with less. Say more with less, my friends. Say more with less. Do more with less. And that's a good stopping point, my friends. Sorry. That's a teaser for you to come back and watch the next video in this series. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. You know, if I were to draw this would take at least 6-8 hours, and we can't make the stream that long. If you want to see me demo live and in person, you got to come to Asia. I have a lot of free resources on my website, drawwithchris.com. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you, my friends. Thank you for joining me.